Hello and welcome to episode number 2 of Unified with Paul Lukas and Chris Creamer. We would like to thank all of you for your support and your positive feedback from episode number 1, but we're done with the introductions and the interviews with each other. We're getting right into the logos uniforms this week for episode number 2. But before we get into that, Paul, Super Bowl was just a couple days ago when we're recording this. It's a bit of a different time now. No Super Bowl parties anymore. What did you do? How did you celebrate the big game?
It was a very different kind of Super Bowl. Like you said, no parties. And the year before, a year ago, my favorite team, the 49ers, they were in the Super Bowl. So I was really amped up that year. This year, a lot has happened in a year, obviously, and not just to the 49ers. So I just watched the game at home and I made a batch of chicken wings, which I like to do if I'm home for the Super Bowl. Normally it would be a much larger batch for a lot more people. And I have to say, I make a pretty good batch of wings, and these came out really well. But man, what a stinker of a game. It was just not a very compelling game. Good looking game. Like from a uniform standpoint, I thought it was one of the better looking Super Bowls. Two good uniform contrasts, and it was a good pairing. I was so glad that the Bucs chose to wear white over pewter, even though they were the designated home team. I think that is by far their best uniform combo. And yeah, so good looking game, but not a very exciting game.
See, when you said I was so glad the Bucs, I thought you were going to go with change their uniform before this season.
That too.
Because, I mean, otherwise we'd have a scoreboard alarm clock running down the field. That'd be a great feature if they could have updated the score on their old alarm clock numbers as Tom Brady throws in touchdowns as the game goes on.
It did not escape many people's notice that several NFL teams that changed their uniforms this year really did a lot better, like the Buccaneers, like the Browns, who upgraded their uniforms and changed their look and changed their luck. They did so much better on the field. But I did think, aside from the change in the overall design, I thought the Bucs made a great move by going with that white over pewter for the game instead of the red over pewter, which I don't care for as much.
No, I don't mind the red over pewter. I guess I'm a bit of a traditionalist. I like seeing the colors at home, and especially with Tampa Bay actually being the home team. A very unique situation. But, the white over pewter, they were undefeated this season wearing it. I'm all for the superstitious uniforms. So all the power to them. They won it. Good for them. And Brady, right, with the Patriots, they would wear the white uniform as well in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, often.
Had the option. So maybe it's related to that. Who knows? Maybe Brady's calling the uniform shots as well. I wouldn't be surprised considering all that guy does. Also, we had a quiet party as well. It was just me and the family, and we went to a local sports pub and picked up our 3 pounds of wings, brought it home and enjoyed. The kids, they don't really care about football; they're too young, but they enjoyed their wings, and we picked up McDonald's Happy Meals for them too. And they sat and watched the first quarter of the game. My oldest, for whatever reason, wanted Tampa Bay to win. Who knows why? I think he just likes the logo, pirate flag. So that's pretty exciting for a young boy. So he was happy when they won. But
I don't mean to interrupt, but something you said, are you saying that in Canada they sell wings at the bar by the pound, not by the dozen or by the count?
I see. Here's one of those things where I had no idea this wasn't a worldwide thing. I just assumed everyone sold wings by the pounds. Yeah, you go in there and you buy, you go in, can I get a pound of wings? That's just what you say.
I mean, already cooked. Like,
yeah.
Oh, wow. No, that's totally like in America, or at least everywhere I've ever been, it's, by the dozen or by, 50 or 60 or, however many. Really interesting. Also, aren't you guys on the metric system?
Yeah, and that could be a whole other episode. I mean, we're so close to the U.S. getting U.S. media all the time that we know both metric and imperial units. It's like, ask me my height in meters. I'm not going to be able to tell you, but I know it. I'm 5'11", right? So I think I'm 180 centimeters just because my driver's license says so. But otherwise, I wouldn't know. And the CFL uses yards.
A kilo of wings just doesn't have the same ring to it.
It doesn't have the same ring to it, but it's a lot more wings. So I'm okay with that. So that's what we did. And it was a nice little quiet thing, and a very unique, another only in 2020, 21 situation was watching the Super Bowl, being up late to watch that, and then the next morning ushering the kids off for their first day of school, which is typically not something you do the day after the Super Bowl. But we woke up tired and ready to tackle that. But yeah, so it was fun. It was good. It was sort of good to do a fun family thing, even if we had no stake in the game.
So it wasn't a very eventful Super
No,
Bowl from a
no,
uniform standpoint. It was a very uneventful Super Bowl.
except for the
So
Chiefs with their inside collar. Uh,
yeah, putting like a slow. I mean, a lot of good that did them, and
Run it
and
back,
nobody could see it. It's like those inner collar slogans don't do much for me.
run
Like
it back.
you
They
can't
should
see
have
it on the
threw it
field.
forward instead of running it back.
Yeah, actually, Pat Mahomes was kind of running back for many of those plays, wasn't he? He was like scrambling,
he,
running it back.
he was taking that message a little too literally, I think.
Yeah, yeah. So we don't have a lot of Super Bowl stuff to talk about.
Nah.
We do have a bit of NFL news that we thought we'd kick around today, and that is the Cleveland Browns announcing shortly before the Super Bowl, like a week or so before, that they have a new 75th anniversary logo, which seems like both interesting because it's this particular team for reasons we'll get to in a minute, but it also opens the door to the whole discussion of anniversary patches, which is more varied and has a lot more nuances than I think a lot of people realize. So let's start first just with this patch. What do we think of it? Or I keep saying patch, but it's a logo. They haven't officially announced yet that it's going to be a patch, but we assume that's going to be the case. I personally, I really like it. It's very simple and straightforward, which seems like something that the Cleveland Browns, like their design style should be simple and
It's almost too exciting for the Cleveland Browns. Look at all the elements on this.
Yeah, it has like 8 stars on it. That's like
whoa.
But it has the very basic two bar face mask helmet, and it's very like a Joe Friday just the facts kind of anniversary logo. I really like it. How about you?
Yeah, it's good. It's simple. I always love when they throw back to past success of the team with the 8 stars representing their various championships in the AAFC and the NFL. There's no Super Bowl stars on there, but there's some pre-Super Bowl stars on there. I'll be curious to see how that looks if they wear it as a patch on the jersey. It might be a little too big, like a big white circle on that otherwise clean Browns jersey. It might not translate well to a patch, but overall it is a good design. But this does lead us to probably the most important part of this anniversary logo, and that is it really the Cleveland Browns 75th anniversary?
Right, because the Browns are the one NFL team that have a continuity of identity, but not a continuity of franchise, because the original Cleveland Browns moved to Baltimore and became the Ravens. And there were no Cleveland Browns for 3 seasons in 1996, 97, and 98. And then a new Cleveland Browns franchise was born for 1999. And when Art Modell moved the original Browns to Baltimore, part of the deal was that he left the name and the intellectual property and the statistics and records all back in the city of Cleveland. And the league likes to say this is the same Cleveland Browns, but is it really? Like, can you really say this is the 75th anniversary? It's a good thing they didn't say 75th season, because
oh my gosh,
3 seasons there they didn't play at all.
That'd be a much easier conversation if they put
right. But I've had people, some UniWatch readers have said like it's the 22nd like, well, who are they kidding? This isn't really the 75th anniversary, and it's a tricky situation. And there's really no other team that's in quite this situation, at least in the NFL.
Right. In the NBA, yeah, you could say the Charlotte Hornets have something similar. The NHL has the Winnipeg Jets. But the Cleveland Browns, they're really the first one to try this let's rewrite history thing. And with this patch, I think they may have gotten away with it because it is the 75th anniversary of the founding of the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, and
right?
It says on it they don't have like a year span. It doesn't say 1946 to 2021. It just says established 1946. And
Yes.
Indeed, the Cleveland Browns, maybe not these Cleveland Browns, but the Cleveland Browns were indeed established in 1946. And so I feel like they're very aware of this unusual situation, and they've kind of danced around it or kind of finessed it intelligently, I think.
Yeah, and I can't argue with it, right? If it said 75th season, I'd say, hold on a second. If it said 1946 to 2021, as you alluded to, I would say, wait a bit. But they're getting away with it. They know what they're doing.
Yeah.
they're aware that some people might disagree with this, and they're handling it well. So yeah, I'm fine with it. I'm glad that they seem to be acknowledging the fact that this team did have you could either say either a 3-year hiatus or is actually a completely new franchise, depending on where you sit on the fence. And that could lead me to my question to you, Paul, is where you sit on the fence with the Cleveland Browns. Are they two separate franchises in your eyes, or are the Ravens the Browns, or are they all the same?
For a long time, a lot of the Ravens roster included old Browns players. Like Matt
Mm.
Barr was the kicker. Ozzie Newsome was their GM, right? Was the Ravens GM, and he came from Cleveland. And it was hard for me to sort of get past the previous Cleveland connection of the
Mhm.
Ravens. And it's not like I thought they were still the Browns, but there were all these reminders that they had been the Browns.
Mhm.
I don't know. It's tough, and I feel for the fans in Cleveland, not just because they had their team taken away from them, but because they have to deal with this. You know, Jim Brown is the team's all-time leading rusher, or is he? It's a tricky thing,
I
and
mean,
I understand like we could do a whole separate episode about what
yeah.
teams should do when they move to another city. Should they be required to give up the identity? Is that really like a civic asset that belongs more to the municipality? And it's something I'm very aware of here where I live in Brooklyn, because there were still
Mhm.
some Brooklynites, like some older Brooklynites, who are still, kind of have an axe to grind about the Dodgers leaving. And obviously they didn't change their name, and people forget the Dodgers team name was a very
Yeah.
Brooklyn-based name. It was about dodging trolleys. They were the Brooklyn Trolley Dodgers. And I don't know what you dodge in LA, but smog or whatever. But they kept that identity, and I'm okay with that. But I get that it's a sort of fraught issue, and when you have something like an anniversary patch, it brings that issue to the fore.
Mhm.
And I'm more okay with it with this type of situation, with these patches and logos and things like that, than the idea that like statistics and records somehow it seems weird to me that something Bernie Kosar did, as quarterback of the Browns, or Brian Sipe, that those records are still part of this Cleveland Browns.
Mhm. Or that Sean Kemp was a Oklahoma City Thunder.
Right,
Part of that.
right.
Uh, it certainly is a touchy issue with a
Yeah.
lot of fans in the fan base as well.
And at one point, it wouldn't have really mattered, because teams didn't routinely, as they do now, did not routinely have anniversary patches. We take
Mhm.
it for granted now that when a franchise hits some sort of milestone, like 75 years in the case of the Browns now, that it's almost expected, and you see it all over social media. Like, when are they going to come out with this anniversary
Mhm.
thing? Or what do you think they're going to do? Will they sell it? Well, they did a 25th anniversary patch. Are they going to do a 35, or will they wait till 50, or whatever it is? It's sort of part of the culture of uniforms now, but that wasn't always the case. And in fact, for a long time, it wasn't the case at all. And it's sort of interesting to look back at the history of anniversary patches, which initially were more about league anniversaries than team anniversaries. And it's almost like players are told, play for the name on the front of the jersey, not the name on the back, like be a
Mhm.
team player. And it's almost like anniversaries had the same sort of thing. Like, you care more about the league anniversary than
Yeah.
your individual team anniversary. At least in my research, as far as I can tell, the first example of a serious uniform anniversary patch was in 1925, when all the teams in baseball's National League
Mhm.
wore the Golden Jubilee patch for the league's 50th season. And then you have to go another quarter century to 1951, at which point American League teams wore their own golden anniversary patch, and National League teams, not to be outdone, wore a 75th anniversary patch. Although that was really one of the more unusual ones. It showed just a glove and a baseball, but did
Mhm.
not have any years, or didn't have the words anniversary or 75th or anything like that. And then it was 2 more years after that, in 1953, the Yankees, who are known, of course, for having no nonsense uniforms without a
Mhm.
lot of pieces of flair or anything like that, they became the first team in Major League Baseball, at least, to wear a team anniversary patch. And it didn't say anniversary, it didn't say season, it said 50 years, 1903 to 1952. And then you have to go another 23 years before the Cubs wore a 100th anniversary patch. And then in the decades after that, it became more common. But it really shows you how, like, we take for granted now that teams do this all the time, but it wasn't like that.
Well, you mentioned it seemed to be more about the league in the early years. And I mean, that does make sense, right? When leagues were actually being threatened by rival leagues and, just folding out of nowhere, which it was very commonplace back then for a league to just disappear. And it would make sense for teams and players to rally around this league. They want to see it succeed. Teams would come and go all the time. But as long as the league was fine, I had a job, right? So let's hope that this league does well. We talked about how it took until 1952 for the first baseball team to do a patch, an anniversary patch. Sorry, 53. Sorry, but the Boston Bruins in the NHL, they did it a couple of years earlier in 1948-49. Except they wore it as their crest that replaced the logo on their jersey, and not only that, but it became their iconic spoked B logo that the team still wears today. Let me do some quick math. 71 years later.
So right, two of the spokes were sort of the year span that they had been, right? They were celebrating their 25th anniversary at that
25th,
point.
yeah. And what is it's? I think it said 24 to 49
Right.
on either side of the B.
And so instead of having a separate patch, they just made it basically their primary logo.
Yeah,
and their crest.
a big crest right on the chest. Yeah. So,
and then if I'm not mistaken, they also became the first NHL team 25 years later to wear a separate patch, like a little shoulder patch.
Yeah, they were a little separate shoulder patch. It had like a grizzly ball, a grizzly bear, I guess, or a brown bear, whatever a Bruin is. I should know this. Inside a little circle. So the Bruins were the first two examples of an NHL team celebrating an anniversary. And it wasn't until like the New York Rangers did it about 4 or 5 years later. They wore a 50th patch, which was also a USA bicentennial patch. I believe it was a 2-in-1 special. And then it's not until like the mid 80s when this really starts to take off across the professional sports world. And that makes sense, right? Because for a long time, there wasn't a lot of expansion in Major League Baseball. They didn't expand until, what was it, 1961, 1960, something like that. Hockey didn't expand.
Again in 69.
Yes. And in hockey, they didn't expand until the late 60s. Help me out here. Football, the AFL, all the American Football League teams, as well as a few NFL teams, they started in 1960. So now you move to 1984. We are 25 seasons into the first great wave of expansion across sports, and you start to see patches appearing throughout the NFL. All the AFL teams, they wear 25th season patches. You start to see, a couple of years later, the New York Mets, they wear a 25th season / anniversary patch. I'm going to let Paul get into that one.
Well, I have a bit to say about that in a few minutes.
Sure. You know what? I'm going to just throw it right to you on that one.
Well, we'll get
there. Okay.
Yeah, wait till that comes up.
So, as time goes on, 25th season celebrations, the anniversaries start coming up throughout the 80s. And then from there in the 90s, when merchandising starts to explode across sports, teams were celebrating any anniversary. Like I remember the Angels wore a 35th anniversary patch at one point, and like the Florida Panthers wore a 5th anniversary patch. If like a major league team wearing a 5th anniversary patch is like, come on, guys. So and now, as Paul alluded to, it seems every 5 years we are going to see a team celebrate an anniversary, regardless of how major or minor the milestone is.
Which is a question we can get. I've thought a lot about this, Chris, as you might imagine.
I also have an answer. We're talking about what the proper numbers to celebrate are for a patch.
Yeah. Let's start with that. Like, what is a legitimate, like, what should be acceptable and what should not be acceptable? Like, now, I think you were alluding to when you were sort of ridiculing the notion of a 5th anniversary, and I would agree. Like, come on, like,
yeah. Well, it depends. It depends, right? If we're talking a major league franchise, 5 years is not worth celebrating, right?
Right.
You should have expected to make it to year 5. And if you didn't, you shouldn't have been invited into the league. But if we're talking about like a minor league team where there's so much turnover and relocation, fine. Celebrate the 5th anniversary, have fun with it, do what you want. But at the major league level, I'm okay with noting, an inaugural season. That's a separate thing. You
Right,
can
right.
wear it
That's
for
a
the season
separate thing.
patch. I'm okay with the team celebrating their 10th year. It's double digits. It's a
Right.
big milestone. But after that, 25, a quarter century. You don't need to go 20. It's ridiculous to celebrate a 20th anniversary for anybody.
For those who are not watching the video version of this podcast, Chris just took a sip out of his SportsLogos.Net 20th anniversary mug.
It's a few years old. We're coming up on 25 here. From the 10, 25, 50, 75, 100. That is the
That
acceptable.
sounds about right. My feeling is that aside from 25 and 75, no anniversary should be celebrated on a uniform with a patch that ends in a 5. Like if it ends in a 35, 45, like there are teams that do that. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Maybe the Astros because they were able to play off the Colt 45s part of their history.
Yeah, that's
But
fun.
in general, like come on, guys. Like just wait for the big ones. It's sort of like the old line about when you get to the end zone, act like you've been there before. Like, like don't celebrate everything. If you try to convince me that every year is special, what you're basically saying is that no year is special.
That's right.
And so that, yeah, I think we're pretty much on the same page here. Now, the next thorny question, and this to me is a big one, is should a team celebrate an anniversary or a season? And like, let's say you mentioned 10th is the first like legitimate one. Should a team be celebrating and wearing a patch for its 10th season or its 10th anniversary? And I think people get sort of mixed up on this. And so first, let's get the distinction clear. Anniversaries are like birthdays. They're the same as birthdays. When you turn 10 years old, you are basically celebrating the 10th anniversary of your birth. You are also starting your 11th year or 11th season, if you prefer, of life. And you started your 10th season when you turn 9 years old. And but nobody makes a fuss over the 9-year-old birthday. It's the 10, the double digit one. That's the biggie.
That's right.
And that's why I like anniversaries. That's one reason why I like celebrating anniversaries, because that's what we do in our culture. Your parents or you yourself, Chris, I don't know how long you've been married, but I assume your 10th anniversary is a bigger one than your 9th wedding anniversary, which is the start of your 10th season, so to speak.
That's exactly right. And you know what, Paul, that was my exact answer to this question. I was going to say that I prefer anniversaries to seasons because we don't actually celebrate, years of our life, right? I'm a bit of a nerd, as we all know. So when my kid was 4 years old, I would say to my wife, "Oh, it's his 5th Christmas," even though he's 4 years old, which would be like, "Wait, what are you talking about?" But we don't go through life like that, right? We don't say, here I am celebrating my 39th February 9th, right? Like I'm 38, and I feel that a team should do the same thing. And
and it's how our culture marks time is through birthdays and anniversaries. And
right,
and I'll give you another good reason for it though, which is that when you have an anniversary, there's a nice symmetry to the years because anniversary patches often have the years spelled out. And I'll give you an example. The one we mentioned before, the New York Yankees, who were the first Major League Baseball team to have a quote unquote anniversary patch, but it wasn't really an anniversary. It was their 50th year. And so the date range on the patch says 1903 to 1952, which is somehow unsatisfying. Like if it said 03 to 53,
perfect.
like there's sort of a symmetry and a balance to that, and they kind of bookend each other. And when you do anniversaries, that's what you get. You get these date ranges shown on the patch that feel more satisfying. Like 2010 to 2020, or
It's so much better.
Yeah, it just feels better. And instead of having something that's like 2003 to 2012, like it's like when you hit a ball not on the sweet spot on the bat, it just doesn't feel right.
Exactly.
And so I feel strongly that the anniversaries are the way to go.
Yeah, and once again, that was my answer. I have it written down here in case you don't believe me. I put I put, I like easy math on the patch. Example 2011 to 2021. I mean, it just looks so much better. And if you're going to celebrate a season, which fine, you do you. If you want to celebrate a season, you do that. Omit the years, omit that span. So my OCD doesn't kick in. And, I don't have to obsess over the fact that the last number in your patch doesn't match on either side, unless it's a 25th anniversary patch, then that just happens. But that's the end of my rant on that.
Well, this leads me to the point you were referring to before about the Mets. Now, the 1986 Mets, who should be like one of the bright points in my life because I'm a lifelong Mets fan, and that's the year they won the World Series. It's the last time they won the World Series, and that's the year with the Buckner play and the whole bit. It was, very satisfying season in a lot of ways, except they wore a patch that year that said 25th anniversary. And it was not their 25th, it was their 25th season. And they even had the date range, 1962 to 1986, which is not a 25 years. It was their 25th season, not anniversary. But the patch said on it, 25th anniversary, 1962 to 1986. And it bugged me all season long. It bugs me even more now that I write about this kind of stuff for a living. And you have teams that often don't themselves understand the difference between an anniversary and a season. And that's a classic example of it.
Now, I would hope that them winning the World Series would heal that wound a little bit for you.
A little
bit, right?
But it's like a fly in the ointment now.
Yeah.
I mean, as a uniform guy, it was like, come on. And especially after a lifetime of sort of Metsiness, for lack of a better term, I was like, can't you even get your anniversary patch right? But they did win the World Series. So
now, did you notice this at the time?
I did, and it was sort of my first recognition or awareness of the difference between an anniversary and a season. I was like scratching my head about it. I was like, something doesn't feel right about this. And there weren't as many anniversary patches around at that time, so there wasn't as much of a sort of body of work or a data pool or something like that to compare to other teams and how they handled it. But it just felt wrong, and it was something I was still sort of working out in my head.
I just realized I didn't even notice this, but 10th anniversary 86, and they started 1977.
You are holding up to the screen a Toronto Blue Jays ticket.
Sorry. For our audio only listeners, I forget. It's a Toronto Blue Jays 10th anniversary logo from 1986, but the team started 1977. So this is another example of
that exact same thing. Yeah, they didn't know that was really their 10th season, not their 10th anniversary.
And I didn't realize that they had buggered that up until you told me that story. And as you're telling me, I'm thinking, wait a second, that ribbon says 10th anniversary, doesn't
it? now, you were a Blue Jays usher or something like that, were you not?
Yeah, I was an usher. One season I spent selling cell phones, but for the 03 and 04 seasons, I was an usher. I like to point out I was there 3 seasons, 02, 03, 04, and the team had a different primary logo each year.
Did you ever, was there a significant anniversary during that span? And did you yourself wear any kind of patch?
No, I wish. I mean, I got they celebrated their 25th season in 2001. So I just missed it. Now, when I worked there in 02, it was their 25th anniversary, but they didn't make any reference to that at all. Now, if they did celebrate an anniversary while I worked there, whether I was allowed to or not, I would have worn a patch just because it's me. Right. Like I would have found a pin, some way to get around it. I would have put a sticker on my name tag or something, just because I want to feel like I'm part of the team and to wear a patch. Now, I did, when I was a kid playing softball, I did play one more season because our team was celebrating their 50th anniversary the next year. And I joined the team for that one last year just so I could wear the 50th anniversary patch.
Like you stuck around, like you.
Yeah. I was the old guy on the team. I was older than everybody else. And I was like, I'm only here because I want to wear this patch on my sleeve. I played here for 7 years. I didn't get to wear an anniversary patch. I'm playing this year.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Chris Creamer, who practices what he preaches, which is pretty great. So another issue that comes up with all this is in hockey and basketball, the seasons straddle 2 calendar years. right? And I feel like a lot of teams sort of cheat. And that's what I feel the teams are doing in general. These teams that do the seasons rather than the anniversaries in any sport, I feel like they've gotten impatient. Like they like just wait for the anniversary, wait the one extra year, and it's much more satisfying that way. But a lot of teams, I feel like they just jump at the chance to like throw some promotional campaign out there, and like they're going to do it in the 10th season, not the 10th anniversary. And then I feel like in the NBA and the NHL, there's the compounding factor that you can sort of fudge the dates, because if your first season was 2000 2001,
Mhm.
you don't have to wait like once you get to 2009 2010, you can like take the first year of your first season and the last year of
Yep.
your like ninth season and call it a 10th anniversary, and it's like there's ways to sort of cook the books on these anniversary logos.
Yeah, and with these split season years, you can get away with not calling it a 10th season or 10th anniversary patch. Just it's just a 10th patch, right?
Right.
And you have no idea what they're talking about because
Right.
these split years they could really get away with it. Um, I have no opinion on that. I just hope they don't use the split season on the year span on the logo, because it just gets really messy when you see like
Does
oh
it
05,
does.
06 slash, you have 4 years on a
Right,
patch. It just
right. It
messes
gets a
everything up.
little numeral heavy there.
Yeah.
And then it's even more complicated with the NHL because a whole season was wiped out because
Yes.
of the strike or the labor dispute. And so if a team, I get this all the time from UniWatch readers, like, can they really say it's the 30th season? They didn't play that one season. And like, I don't know what you say to that.
Yeah, it,
Like,
it depends. What does the team consider? Like, do the team consider that was still a season for us? In our front office, it was still a season. We still existed as an entity that season. But what I do like about it is that it gets rid of the season versus anniversary dilemma, because now in the NHL, the seasons and anniversaries sync up. Is that not right? If you
I
remove that one
guess you
season,
can also sort of get around it by saying years instead of seasons, because a
right?
year
Yeah.
did go by, right? Even if
Yes, that's true.
season took place that year. So all of these, like lots and lots of nuances to anniversary patches, and I do feel like there has been kind of a lowering of the bar and a little bit of a cheapening of anniversary patches, because teams do it. They don't just do those big benchmark years that you were talking about,
Mhm.
25, 50, 75. Here's another issue. What do you think about Roman numerals on patches? Because I feel like teams with 10th anniversaries, they love to put that big X on
It looks
there.
cool.
Yeah.
Again, I've called myself this many times during this conversation, even before we hit record. I am a nerd, so any excuse to use Roman numerals is something I will take. And this was a battle because I wanted Roman numerals on that, and they didn't give it to me. Um,
What are
sorry,
you
I was
pointing at?
again. People can't tell I'm pointing to something. My 20th anniversary logo for the website.
Oh, tell us about that. Who designed that, and like, what was the battle you had with
I'm
your
it's
designers?
not really a battle. It was Torch Creative, who are fantastic people. They did the SportsLogos.Net logo, which I am holding up on a coaster to this camera right now. And they also did our 20th anniversary logo in 2017. And not a battle. I was joking a bit there, but I love Roman numerals. I love the idea of an XX, and they came back with a few proposals, and they really liked this one. I liked it because it had the split style numbering, like the Toronto Blue Jays use.
Mm-hmm.
So I went with it. But I love any excuse to use a Roman numeral. So XX looks cool. Next year, when it's our 25th, I'll probably push hard for an XXV. Another reason why I love the Super Bowl, because they are sticking with it stubbornly. They are. We don't care if it looks ridiculous once you hit 50. We're staying with it. Gone
we
them.
we can only hope SportsLogos.Net it lasts long enough to get into the LI period of anniversaries.
Yes, I hope so. I want to see what the Super Bowl does once they hit 100, because they've established they'll probably be Super Bowl 100 rather than Super Bowl C. But
Right.
are they going to be Super Bowl CI? CII? Like, that'll be cool. I want to see that. How long do I have to live to get there? Will I make it? Maybe. Hopefully I'm not running the website by then.
Here's another question. In your opinion, should teams have like a consistent progression of a sort of identifiable design theme through their various anniversary logos? Or is it okay to have like your 10th and your 20th, if you do a 20th, look completely different, like they were done by two different
Mhm.
designers or something like that? Because I hadn't really thought much about that, honestly, until this year. The San Jose Sharks, when they unveiled their new anniversary logo for this season, they provided like the most detailed explainer, like a little infographic showing every little new, like every stitch of the patch had some hidden meaning or branding story to it. But they also showed the progression of their previous anniversary patches, which I thought was really interesting because teams don't usually
Mhm.
do that. And they
No.
were really showing like some sense of continuity, not only that the patch matches their current uniform, but that it shows a continuity of how they've handled their anniversaries through their
Mhm.
visual history. And I thought that was really interesting. And I think that's something teams tend not to do, but
Mhm.
I think it is, you know, a commendable approach if you can do it. And you know, a lot of teams, they have turnover in their graphics department, and often
Mhm.
there isn't much personnel continuity, much less visual continuity. But if you can do it, I think like that's a good way to go.
Yeah, absolutely. It's any logo evolution over time I'm going to love. And plus, it'll make the anniversary logo section of their team page on SportsLogos.Net look that much that much cooler. Going back to the 90s as a Blue Jays fan, right? I used to see pictures of them wearing the 10th anniversary patch because I was too young to follow the team in 86. But when 96 came around and it was their 20th anniversary or 20th season, they used the same design. They just changed the one to a two. And I
Mhm.
thought that was awesome. I thought that was great. I started, sketching out, okay, here's what the 30th one will look like. Here's what the 40th will look like. It is going to follow that same theme. And then, of course, they immediately did not, right? So they stopped after 10 and 20. But imagine if they kept going, right? It would give you an idea of what to look forward to. And, it ties things together. You could change the logo in the zero to whatever the logo is of the time. But I love that idea, and you could slowly tweak it as years go on, but
Mhm.
it ties everything together. Anything that sort of unifies, to borrow the title of this program, a franchise visually, I love.
What about teams that move? Like, and keep the same name, like the
Yes.
Dodgers, like the Rams, like the Milwaukee or the, the Atlanta Braves, who used to be the Milwaukee Braves, and before that were
How
the
old are
Los
you,
Angeles.
Paul?
Well, they're an interesting case because
Yeah.
they're actually wearing a 150th anniversary patch this season,
Mhm.
celebrating their entire three-city history. And we've seen other teams like the Memphis Grizzlies or even the Dodgers themselves
Mhm.
have worn patches celebrating just the years within their current or new, like, relocated city.
Mhm.
What do you think of that? Is it better to do just the current city, or honor the entire franchise history, or a mix of both, which I think is what a lot of these teams do?
That's a good. Well, it depends on if did you carry the same identity with you, right? I
So
feel
I'm saying, assuming that the team
assuming you
has the
did.
same name.
Okay. In that case, I would say a mix is fine, as
Mhm.
long as you don't get too crazy by celebrating an anniversary every year, right?
Mhm.
You could say, oh, it's our 10th anniversary of the franchise. Next year's the fifth anniversary of our relocation. Next year's the fifth of opening of our new arena. It just keeps on going. But I'm fine with that. I know the Grizzlies did that last year. They celebrated the 25th anniversary of the franchise, and then this year they celebrated the 20th anniversary of the relocation.
Right.
And they kind of turned it into a 2-year celebration, which is a neat way to do it, right?
Yeah, they kind of like stacked them up as a as
Yeah,
a like double your pleasure kind of thing.
right.
Yeah.
It wasn't a okay, oh, we're trying to get away with two separate celebrations. It's like 2 years to celebrate. The
Mhm.
first year, we will acknowledge our time in Vancouver and realize that we started there. And then the
Right.
next year, we will celebrate our local fans and how you guys, have sort of kept us going and still support us to this day. I like that. I like that they did that.
Yeah,
Um,
and it was convenient for them that they were able to
yes.
do. I mean, you don't always have that opportunity where the consecutive years offer you the two different anniversaries.
Right. It's not often a team relocates that close to an anniversary milestone season. It would be nice if they did. So if teams are looking to relocate, please wait till milestone. And this will solve so many issues. Tampa Bay Rays, I'm looking at you. Whenever you go to Montreal, wait till your 30th, maybe. Aren't they? What they're talking 2028. That's their 30th anniversary.
That's true. That is true.
Interesting.
But then there's also like there was a period when they were the Devil Rays,
right?
And they didn't actually keep the same name quite. Sort of a modified
identity. If the Tampa Bay Rays better not differentiate the Devil Rays from Rays in their anniversary celebrations. That's just ridiculous. But if the Devil Rays do move to Montreal and say they do take the name Expos, this is a whole nother complicated conversation.
Yeah. We'll get a lot more podcast mileage out of that if it happens.
Yeah, 7 years from now. Let's
All right, I have one last thing to bring up about anniversary patches.
Wait, you're not sharing your thoughts on any of these.
Oh, well, sure I did. I said I'm much more in favor of anniversaries versus seasons.
I just want to make sure I'm not hogging the mic here.
I'm generally in favor of things that help teach history. Like
yes.
Anniversary patches are much like throwback uniforms are history lessons, or they're opportunities for history lessons. And so I like that.
Aside from the merchandise retail opportunity.
Yeah. I like that something like the Braves saying that they're having 150th anniversary, because it acknowledges, especially for younger fans who don't realize that the team has a history that predates Atlanta, that they were in Milwaukee and that they were in Boston. And I remember when I was a kid and learning that, and like I had to get like just the idea that the Braves, I was so used to the term Atlanta Braves, and like, oh, there was a Milwaukee. How does that sound? And it's just sort of, I was learning it, and so patches sort of help teach that history, and that's what makes me sort of uneasy about something like the Browns saying, oh, this is the same batch of records, and this, because it kind of erases that history and creates a revisionist history.
It's a rewritten phony history almost. On one hand it is, but on the other hand, Jim Brown is not a Baltimore Raven.
Right.
He can't be.
There is no perfect solution to these situations. But in general, I would say I prefer franchise anniversary patches more than just in the city, for that reason, because they teach the whole history and acknowledge the whole history instead of just, oh, since we got to our current dress. And so, yeah, I prefer that.
But are you opposed to a city patch?
You can mix and match.
Yeah, okay.
I'd say you can.
You have a preference, but you don't necessarily mind that they.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm the same way.
Because that's history too, right? Yeah. Like a team,
team relocated, and it's a completely separate fan base, and they do deserve some recognition.
Right, and I think there's competing interests here, and clearly a lot of times the biggest interest is ownership. Like you take a team like the Arizona Cardinals, who were the St. Louis Cardinals, and before that the Chicago Cardinals, and I believe have been owned in all three cities by the Bidwell family. And I know the family owned them in St. Louis, and I think in Chicago too. And so obviously they think of the big picture of franchise ownership, because it's been their property for all that time. They don't think of it as just an Arizona thing. And so, a team where there's a new owner and he just, bought it in its current location and had no connection to the team in its earlier incarnation or in an earlier city, may feel a little differently and may choose to highlight a different chapter of that history.
And, just something I thought of while you're discussing that, I think the Detroit Red Wings in the 80s wore a patch celebrating 50 years of one family owning the team.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think so. I got to look that up, but it's like 50 years of Norris ownership or something.
Wow, that is a very special kind of anniversary.
I hope I'm right about that. Otherwise I have no idea what I'm thinking about, but I'm pretty sure I've seen that somewhere.
I do have one more question. We barely touched on the sport of basketball here, except talking about the season, the split calendar year seasons. And basketball uniforms, of course, are trickier in terms of patches, although the NBA seems to manage to get advertising patches on all of them.
They have no issue with patches in the NBA.
Yeah, but in general, you have less real estate to work with. You don't have sleeves. And so one of the more interesting anniversary patches that came up as I was thinking about this episode was how in 1980-81, the NBA celebrated their 35th anniversary. It was a league-wide thing. All the teams wore a patch. And again, 35 to me is not really a benchmark year, but okay, it's when they chose to do it. And they had the teams wear the patch on the shorts rather than on the jerseys. And we don't think of basketball shorts as really like a canvas for patches, right? Like a
Yeah.
canvas for ornamentation. You know, there's a team logo there and there's a stripe and whatever, but you don't think about the shorts, just like in any sport. You don't think about the pants in general
Right.
as being like a canvas for pieces of flair or whatever you want to call it, the way you do a jersey.
Mhm.
And so, what do you think about NBA teams because they don't have as much room on the jersey? Should basketball teams in general think more about having patches on the shorts?
I guess at this point they have to. There's no room for patches anymore, right? Like both, they have the Nike on one side, they got the sponsor on the other side. They had to kick the NBA logo to the back.
Right.
Like they don't even have room for the league patch anymore. Uh, I think I would rather they not wear an anniversary patch at all than wear the patch on the shorts. Just because
Just because it looks ridiculous,
it
the
looks
idea of it.
silly, right? Like in the NBA, I feel that they had a good thing going there in the late 90s when it was their 50th anniversary in 96, 97. And they simply made their NBA patch gold and white rather than in
Right,
colors.
right. The league patch,
Yeah,
right?
I thought that was brilliant, right? That's such a subtle way to acknowledge the 50th anniversary. It doesn't take up a lot of space. You're not littering the jersey with patches everywhere. Let's just take a patch that's always there, anyways, recolor it gold so people know that there's something special this year. And that's it. It still tells the story without really messing with the design of the jersey. And I believe next year they're celebrating their 75th anniversary. So we'll
Mhm.
see what they end up doing because there is no place to put a patch. So they'll probably just put something
Right.
on the back to replace the NBA patch there. But
But
yeah,
what about team anniversary? Like, should
yeah,
teams have their own? Should they do the shorts thing, or you'd rather them not do that either?
no, I think that would look silly, right? Like I'm just picturing it in my mind, unless it was something small and maybe they put it off to the side where they would normally put
Mhm.
like a secondary logo on the side of the
Right, right.
shorts. Not like what they wore in 80, 81, which was a rather large
It was. It
patch.
was and shorts were really short back then. So
Yes.
you actually had smaller shorts with this giant patch. It was a really unusual combination.
Why do you think they did that? Was that like, was it a production issue? They couldn't make a patch small enough to, or like what
I
happened
don't
there?
know. I guess they really wanted to show off their anniversary. You know, it was they
We need
wanted to.
everybody to know that this is the 35th anniversary for some reason. This is such a
Yeah.
big deal that we made it to 35, everybody.
As I was looking at photos of that in preparing for this episode, I learned or remembered that there wasn't even any consistency about how it was worn. Some teams wore it on the left short leg, and some wore it on the right. Some players who wore particularly short shorts wore it on their hip,
Oh my gosh.
like more on the hip. So yeah, so they, even though it was a big flashy patch, it wasn't it wasn't instituted
Yeah.
or rolled out in a uniform fashion, as it were.
Well, the standards back then, nobody seemed to care back then, right? Like
Yeah,
it was like the
a
old, it was
lot
like the
looser.
Wild West when it
Yeah,
came to branding standards back then.
for
So
sure, for
doesn't
sure.
surprise me. Oh, what are we up to? We got to be hitting up our 1 hour limit by
I
now.
think we may have said everything that needs to be said.
I am impressed, Paul, that
Maybe more than needs to be said about anniversary
look,
patches.
what we did was we took a Cleveland Browns 75th anniversary patch and turned it into an hour discussion. And I think that is worthy of applause. I'm gonna,
I think
good
that's what
job.
we're here for, man. That's why this
No,
podcast exists.
I don't think anybody else could do this.
Because we can riff on that thing, and these are like, meaty issues that need to be addressed, and I think we have addressed them pretty fully.
Now we discussed this in the lead up to this episode, and you said I want to do anniversary patches, and I said there's no way we're going to be able to talk for an hour on anniversary patches. And you wrote me this long email, and I'm like, I'm sold. Like you did it. You're right. We can talk about it.
QED, Chris.
Oh man, that was awesome. I think I enjoyed that more than I thought I would. This topic.
Excellent. Excellent. I would say I enjoyed it about as much as I figured I would, because I knew I would. Like I said, I've thought about this one a lot, and it is an interesting topic. And we'll
It
have
is.
links to some things we've written about anniversary patches, and photos of most of the patches and examples that we talked about will be in our show notes. And so you'll be able to see, if you're listening to this on audio, you'll be able to see everything we were talking about.
And for those listeners, yes, we're aware that the Boston Braves wore a pilgrim hat in 1930, and we're aware that the Athletics wore a Connie Mack patch in 1950. We just wanted to focus on the team anniversaries and league anniversaries specifically. There certainly were some interesting patches worn throughout the years, but we were focusing mostly on franchise teams and leagues for this one.
Right, because that pilgrim hat, that was that the Massachusetts or the Boston anniversary?
I thought it was and again, this is more American history, so help me out here. But I thought it was the 300th. Was it the 300th anniversary of the Pilgrims coming
I
to?
believe that one's either. We'll have to look this up.
Yeah.
We wish I had this before. It's either the colony of Massachusetts or the city of Boston.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And the Connie Mack one, that was when the Philadelphia A's wore a patch celebrating the anniversary of their manager, right? Like
Yes.
is,
And they even changed their uniforms that one year for it, right? They had gold trim just because their manager had been around. I mean, that is worth celebrating, by the way. 50 years as a manager. Let's not downplay that. But
they did not all dress up in a suit and tie like Connie Mack
did. Oh man, imagine if that happened now. All the players would have special suit and tie uniforms for one day. Oh, geez.
All right. I think now we've finally exhausted.
Okay.
All right.
Roll the credits, Paul.
We have fancy closing credits this time around. Unified is a joint production of UniWatch and SportsLogos.Net. Our producer editor joining us for the first time with this episode is Chris Fratterigo. Technical assistance from John Ekdahl and Charlie Cook. If you like our show, please leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. It helps us, pushes our podcast up to the top of the list. You can follow us on Twitter at UnifiedCast. The logo that you'll see on that Twitter page was designed by Joe Hilseberg. We are very much in the market for advertisers who we'd feel good about partnering with and who'd feel good about partnering with us. If that sounds like you, or if you want to get in touch for any other reason, please email us at info@unified.show. You can also visit our website where you'll find those show notes I was just talking about and links to our previous episodes at unified.show. That's it for this episode. Stay well, and we'll see you next week.